connecting Indigenous musicians and artists to the world. Welcome to Indigenous Superstars with your host, Rhonda Head.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show tonight. I'm coming to you live from Boye, Manitoba, the heart of Opaskwayak Cree Nation. And I just want to say how much fun I had interviewing Felipe Rose on Monday. We had a great time. Felipe is the Indian guy off of the Village People, and he sang YMCA. So he got me to table dance doing the YMCA, and it was so much fun. And we had a great time interviewing him. And if you want to check out the last interview I had, go to my YouTube channel. You could subscribe to it. It's Rhonda Head, and you'll find the interview there with Felipe Rose. And he has such an incredible career, and now he's gone solo, and he's a big supporter of Indigenous musicians, and he's a great mentor for a lot of us. So thank you for being on the show on Monday, Felipe. It was so much fun interviewing you. I just want to mention that I want to thank Stay at Home Manitoba. I got a grant from the provincial government to fund the show. I bought some new equipment and getting a new website built. So I just want to give a shout out to the Manitoba government for the Manitoba Stay at Home program. And there's a lot of organizations that taking advantage of the grant and employing a lot of artists throughout Manitoba and throughout the country. So I want to thank them for supporting us artists that really need to be, that miss performing in front of a crowd, but now the new norm is performing in front of the camera and performing virtually. So thank you very much for hiring the artists and keeping the music going and not letting it stop. So I just want to say that tonight is my 61st show. I started off interviewing Indigenous musicians, and then after I got the grant, I brought in my list of artists to interview. And part of the expansion includes people from the Powwow Trail, Indigenous designers, and eventually I'm going to interview Indigenous people in the film industry. So I'm really looking forward to that. And there's so many amazing artists and dancers and singers in our nation, and we know that. And I'm happy that I'm giving them a platform to share their stories and their talent. And I have a really amazing guest tonight, and I'm really excited that he agreed to be interviewed today. And I just wrote something really quick before I bring him on. The Powwow Trail has its own celebrities, and the people that follow the Powwow Trail know that it's true. Like there's famous dancers and singers, and they're just right on top of their game. And it's hello Randy Decora, thanks for tuning in. He says it's his first time watching. So we know that there's a really awesome singers and powwow dancers that are really on top of their game, and they train hard and practice, and those are our own celebrities in the Powwow Trail, from champion singers to champions to MC that entertain and keep the powwow flowing. The stories and the history that is passed down needs to be told and shared. That is why I started interviewing powwow people. And in my eyes, they're also Indigenous superstars. So I want to bring on my guest, who's a decorated veteran, a world champion dancer who's well versed in the Powwow Trail and has lots of knowledge and lots of stories to tell, and is very well respected in the Powwow Trail, and a very good friend of mine, Mr. Boye. Hey, welcome to Indigenous Superstars.
Aho.
So, Boye, where are you coming from? Where are you coming live from?
Albuquerque, New Mexico. About 40 degrees down here. We had a little bit of snow yesterday. It melted about an hour, but give us some of that moisture. We sure could use some of that snow down here.
Oh my God, I think we have like, I don't know, maybe 5 feet of snow. And let's see, I'll tell you, it's minus 26 degrees right now and and it's cold.
Wow, wow, wow. Well, I want to thank you,
Randy,
Rhonda, for giving me an opportunity to come on the air tonight and share perhaps a few stories, or what's kind of happening across Indian country, or we say Powwow country. Of course, the COVID has kind of affected a lot of our travels, and basically, isolated everyone for a while. But hopefully, it's a time that we can start, working on new outfits, new regalia, and new songs for a lot of the singers. I know a lot of them. We keep in touch by phone. I'm not a Facebook kind of guy, but on the internet and texting and phone, basically my only communication today. So I feel bad today because we've lost so many friends, especially a lot of legends in the power world over the last year or so. I feel bad because I can't attend their funerals or help them, and kind of sad, because a lot of these young guys that used to travel with me, they'd always say, when your time comes, we're going to take care of you. But lo and behold, they all leaving before me, and it's sad. It's kind of a statement of what is happening now today in the Indian world, and especially in the power world. We've perhaps lost about 50 legends in the last 8 months, and continue to climb. We're all worried about this new COVID, this new wave that's coming in, and we hope that and pray. We all hope and pray that times will get better.
that's
Yeah,
so
it's
true. That's true.
yeah. I just like I say,
Very
just give
true.
a shout out to a
Uh,
lot of my friends out there that have families, that are still hurting today, and I pray that their legacy, their stories, will remain. That's kind of what I see in my purpose today, is trying to preserve a lot of the old ways, a lot of the traditions of long ago, and keep that instilled in a lot of our dances today, a lot of our powwows. So yeah, I feel pretty bad today. I'm losing some big champions. I lost one of my boys there in Manitoba. They buried him last week. Preston Paggi, he was a world champion hoop dancer, two-time world champion, and one of my star students. He won a lot of accolades, and I want to say, little brother, travel well. That's all I can say. And to the Paggi family, to the people of Manitoba, it's a big loss. So again, for many
yeah.
families around the country, I feel pretty bad about it.
Yeah, it's a really tough time right now for sure for everybody, not only our nation, but all the whole world is we really are all in this together. And I know we lost community members in my community of OCN too. And you just brought me to you jogged up my memory of the reason why I wanted to start interviewing people on the Powwow Trail is because like you said, the Powwow, some of the Powwow legends have left us to go to this onto the spirit world. And for me, I want to start interviewing people on the Powwow Trail to so we can hear their stories and hear their history of the tribe that they come from, and to hear about the dancing, the singing, and how beautiful and how spiritual it is. And it's such a beautiful way of life. And when I interview people such as yourself, we have so much knowledge, and I'm can't wait to hear what you're going to share with us tonight. So so I'm going to get on with the question. Oh, Randy Decora said, "Hello, aho, lad."
Yeah, good brother of mine, another veteran from Winnebago, Nebraska. I do a lot of
Oh,
work down in their community. I've emceed their powwows many years, but primary function in my going down there is sharing a lot of our history, because the Winnebagos, Nebraska, and the Ho Chunks of Wisconsin are basically the same, just by treaty that we've been separated, just like the the tribes in Canada, many of the Crees, across Canada from British Columbia to Nova Scotia. You look at all the different various bands of the Cree. Well, same holds true for the Ho-Chungaha and the Winnebago. We are the same. I speak a similar language, or I should say identical language, but I do want to, think in a good way of a lot of my brothers and sisters down in Winnebago and Nebraska, and they hold perhaps the oldest powwow in North America. I believe it's about the 154th annual celebration, or 55th, something like that. But it is the oldest powwow in the world. So I just want to give a
I
shout
went
out
there.
to all my. Yep, yeah.
Yes, I attended that powwow, and it was beautiful. One of the beautifulest powwows that I ever attended. It was awesome.
I think that was when Stony Park was in the rage. I think back then. I
Yeah,
remember
they were.
that. That was back in
Yeah,
the 90s. Yeah, yeah, that
yeah,
was
that
a
was.
good time.
Yeah, it sure was. So I want to get into asking you some questions. I know we've done few shows in the past when you were up in northern Manitoba, and when you're talking to the audience, you'd always say that powwow was a way of life. Can you tell us about that?
Well, the origin of powwow, when we talk back to the beginning, as we know powwow today, I would have to credit back to probably about 1600, when, as far as recorded history, and according to a lot of oral history, powwow started, I would say, among the Omaha people. I know some of my Eastern brothers would probably disagree in part because the influx of the introduction of a lot of the pilgrims and the people from Europe. But powwow, as we know today, was kind of originated among the warrior societies. And like I said, talking about Winnebago, Nebraska, we honored one of our great chiefs who fought in the war back in the wars among the Dakota people, the Ho-Chungaha, I'm forgetting all the titles, but I'm sorry, Randy. But again, thinking about the history of Little Chief, a Little Priest, and him coming back mortally wounded, and there was a honoring, there was a ceremony conducted, and there were certain songs that were sung, Bear Clan songs, Grizzly Bear songs, and from that became the origin, perhaps, of one of the oldest ball powwows today. And thus today, we see powwow. I always oftentimes say I credit the Omaha people for bringing powwow today, because they originated what we call the grass dance. The grass dance is a reflection of the return of many of our warriors, where they brought home war trophies, or lack of better word, the scalps that were taken in battle. They incorporated them into their regalia, thus creating what you see in the grass dance outfit. Later on, it was replaced by the grass, and eventually by ribbon and fringe that you see today. But we still, again, honor, and we think about the Omaha people and what they brought to us. Later on, this dance expanded. Many other nations or tribes took that as kind of a way of life. There was a meeting held back in the 1750s where there were a number of horses, I believe the Ho-Chungaha, the Winnebago, and the Arikara, the Dakota people participated in this meeting, and they bought this dance from the Omaha. It was around Sioux Falls area, and then from there it expanded. The Arikara, of course, taking it up to the Fort Berthold, sharing with the Adata, a kind of a snowball chain effect. The Dakota, Lakota spread two ways, to the north and to the west. And to the Ho-Chungaha people, it went eastward to the Woodlands people. But yet the original story still remained the same when we talk about the origin and looking at at that time, they called it the green grass dance. The green grass dance later became the friendship dance, and then come to what we realize is Herushka today, with Chipi among the Dakota. It has different terminologies, but perhaps the oldest terminology is Herushka. Herushka was the Ho-Chunk word meaning to fight. That's the original. And I oftentimes say to trace origins here in North America is by language. We look to language. You look at the origin. There's basically about 9 or 10 different language bases throughout North America, the United States, and Canada. And from that, derived through history, the introduction of the European people changed the language somewhat. A lot of the tribes, for example, from Oklahoma originated in the Northern Plains. Many of them came from the Great Lakes region. And from that, through the language and through time, they start accepting different lifestyle, different ways, different interpretations. But again, going back to the beginning, we're talking about back in the 1700s. And then there was a meeting that was held up in Boye, from what I understand, from the Cree people. There was a meeting held with the Arikara, the Hidatsa, the Mandan, where they exchanged, just like they did down in Sioux Falls, and took the dance to Canada, expanded to the Cree, to the Blackfoot, to many of the Powwow, I lack a better word again, tribes throughout Canada started taking this way of life. Perhaps I say today, and looking at, for example, traditional dance, the most influential nation that derived what we see dance today was the Dakota people. They took the tail feather societies. We look to regalia many times as a reflection of our warriors. When they came home, when I MC powwows, I usually like to introduce the beginning and saying that when our warriors came home from battle, they would stop at the edge of the village and they would lower their hair, they would paint their face, and they would put their war trophies on and would come into the middle of the village. And from there, they would share, their stories. They would pass on the rights of feathers, the designs, the color combinations that we used. We believe that every tribe, every clan has basically 4 different colors. So long ago, we could identify a certain clan, a certain tribe, just by looking at color combinations or by designs, the regalia. We look at the tail feather bustles, that was basically introduced by the Dakota people. The Woodlands people didn't really have that among the Ho-Chungath. I think back looking at the ancient picture, the old pictures of long ago, dating back 300, 400 years ago. They were basically floral design. They used, for example, the otter. The otter played a big important part in the Woodlands culture. It was a reflection of, like, the tail feather societies of the plains, is a reflection of the warrior societies. Because of a lot of the tribes or nations that basically were relocated down to Oklahoma, for example, you'll still see that certain respect of the otter. You'll notice they do not wear their feathers like the northern plains, but they wear the trailers, they call it, the otter furs that go down their back, or they wear the otter turbans. That again is a reflection of the warrior societies long ago. And so that again is partially one part of when we look at regalia, what it represents and where it comes from. When you look at origins, we look at the regalia itself. You look at the background. When for many of the bead workers, when you look at the background, that usually tells where they come from. For example, the Southern Plains, you will use a lot of yellow, brighter colors. You look at the Woodlands area, they use the color green, such as what I wear in my regalia. And the designs, again, are a reflection of my clan, my belief, my spirit, so to speak. And I'll get to that a little later. But again, it's everything has a certain identity. Used to be up into the 1950s and 60s that you could identify a dancer out there just by looking at the regalia. Today, it's pretty hard because everybody copies from one another. Everything somewhat become Pan-American. And so now people copy from one another. And of course, money had a big influence on the contemporary powwows of today. I like to kind of address and go back to the spirit of powwow, the origin of powwow. My people, many of the northern plains, we do not take our feathers lightly. For example, oftentimes say, that never put an eagle feather on your head unless you have the right to. Rights are perhaps the right to have anything is perhaps the most misunderstood word in our culture. Long ago, a right was based on the taking of a human life. In other words, given to us by our warriors. Especially among the Ho-Chungath people, we are a warrior-based people, warrior-based nation, where that everything that we wear, our regalia, our colors, our designs, our reflection of our clan affiliation, and the rights bestowed upon us by our veterans, our warriors before us. The feathers, we have ceremonies among the Hochangada, for example, when a feather is given, when someone comes to me and gives me tobacco to feather their daughter, their sister, or a young person, a new member to the Powwow circle, a warrior is often given tobacco to bestow that honor. And from there, there's usually a giveaway. And people say, well, when we have giveaways, what do you give? I oftentimes say, well, what is a human life worth to you? That's what you put in as much as what you share and give to the people. Among the Hochangada people, a warrior is given that right um, to honor that child or that woman relative. And from there, they will share a story. Now, war stories among the many of the northern plains. I'm talking about the Dakota, Lakota, Hochangada people, the Rikuras, many of the tribes in the north, the Crow people. A warrior is given that right, given tobacco, and he must tell a war story, a story of actual combat, something not necessarily of the spirit, or excuse me, the story of that feather, but again, the enemy that was taken. Every feather, every plume that someone wears on their head is an enemy that was taken in battle. So we think and revere that in a certain way. The individuals that I have feathered myself will wear a red tip, a red plume on their feather, which signifies that the person that gave that to him was wounded in combat. So again, that's very honorable, very respected in many of the societies, the warrior societies of the North. Again, today, like I said, I like to kind of go back and I talk about the old ways, the traditional ways of our forefathers. Songs were composed in honor of the bravery of the return of many of our warriors. Songs were composed in what they perhaps had seen in battle. I think, for example, of the Little Priest songs of what he had seen in battle, the coup that he brought back, the war trophies that he brought back, the stories that we share within our own lodges. The Hochangada people, we have originally two different religions. The first religion is that of the war bundle religion, the war bundle society. And over the years, we adapted from the Menominee and the Ojibwe. We adopted the medicine lodge, Medewin lodge. But these are, again, all a reflection of our societies, the history of what we share among our warrior societies. But again, powwow, it has many different interpretations. To the traditional people, we say it means to give, to honor, to give to the people, to share. I myself received many times bundles, materials, but I cannot keep that. I share that with my women relatives. That is an honor because they carry my spirit with them. That's perhaps why I'm still here today. I try to rekindle and keep our old histories, our knowledge of our old stories and what I was taught. I'm only a reflection of my uncles, my grandfathers before me, the teaching of my elders. I have not veered off too much from in my stories of how I was taught. There's a certain formality involved in telling a war story, and thus you see that at all powwows. Most all Northern Plains people adopt that and have always had that since time immemorial, I guess, so to speak. So again, to many of the young people out there, never put a feather on your head because so and so has one, or put things on your regalia because so and so, a big champion, wears that. Always inquire. You talk to your uncles, your grandfathers, and they will, in turn, if knowledgeable, will tell you about the origins and the warrior societies of long ago. So powwow, in essence, is a reflection of the return of the warriors, the stories that are shared, the rights that are passed on, the songs that are, again, honoring the return of the warriors. Some of these family songs, honor songs, veteran songs today have become a part of, we say, flag songs, a part of honoring songs, known like flag songs that were basically belonged at one time to a particular warrior, a particular family, and later it was adopted by perhaps a tribe or a nation and became a flag song. Today, the advent of contests, and especially the big money powwows. You're looking at first place being $50,000, for example, and a lot of the major powwows, and a lot of them are always looking at originality, creating new songs, and giving credit to, I've seen how powwow has evolved. I've also seen how music has evolved. Long ago, songs, again, they really were not considered word songs. They basically were loose phonetics, so to speak. And later on in the late 1970s, groups like Chiniki Lake, Stony Park came out with a lot of word songs. I remember a lot of tribes or nations were kind of objected to it, but became a craze. And I do credit them at the beginning with a lot of the word songs, the themes of today. From there, it evolved. Uh, Red Bull, I think of them, Pigeon Lake, a lot of the Cree tribes started up. A lot of Dakota people. I invited Chiniki and Stony Park down to Bismarck. Bismarck back in the early 1970s was kind of the main powwow, the main ones. And when the Stonies came down from Alberta, they brought a lot of the word songs with them. And people, the Cree, the Dakota people kind of felt, had mixed emotions about word song because they belonged to warriors. And a lot of those songs back then talked about the beauty of dance, the spirit of dance. Uh, I have to think about, when I think about powwow music, I think Chiniki Lake, for example, Rod Hunter, we know him as Sonny, but Rod Hunter composed a lot of beautiful songs and top 10 in the hit parade, the songs back then. And I stayed among them. I used to sweat and go to the ceremonies. I stayed in Morley. And I asked him one time, Rod, I said, Sonny, where do you get these songs from? And I kind of chuckled. He looked at me. We're going into Calgary. And he said, you look at that little window right there. He said, that little window on the side, open it up a little bit and you could hear that wind kind of whistling. He said, when I'm driving by myself, I listened to that. I opened up that little window and believe it or not, he said, I hear melodies off that. And I said, wow. That's where that song, and that's where it comes from. And I have a little tape recorder, and I take that whistling song and I make a song out of that. Then I think about a theme, maybe a woman dancer, an individual, and I'll talk about it in that song. So that's how I create songs. But originally, for a lot of the people that are singers, long ago, it was kind of a map, before the introduction of the European people, the white people, so to speak, we used song to take us from one place to another. You hear about these songs they call trail songs. Well, it basically tells you where you're at. How I learned this was when I recall going to Morley for the first time. I was riding with Joe Rohn, and we were going down to a powwow. He kind of introduced me to Morley. We're looking up at Yamnuska, and he said, "There's a beautiful among the Cree people." He said, "There's a beautiful song. You look up at that mountain. That's the highest point, and you follow the trail, the lay of the land, and how it comes down. The Cree people, we know this valley. We know Morley by this song." And then when I relocated, I was born here in New Mexico. And I came down here and getting to know the Pueblo people, begin to find and tracing a lot of their songs and their origins, their history. They talk about a time when they resided down in Mexico and how they were relocated, how they moved and migrated up into New Mexico area. Their area, so to speak, was all the way to Las Vegas, Mexico, northern Mexico, to Las Vegas, southern Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas. This was Pueblo country. But back then, when you look at music, they did the same thing. They have songs that are reflections of the spirit that reside in southern Colorado. Same here in New Mexico. You look at Sandia, the mountains. Each of these areas, have certain songs that depict, again, that are used in their ceremony. So you apply the same principle to powwow. That's where a lot of the songs came as well. So that to me was kind of the origin of songs way back, and it was a way of how to move from one place to another by song. So, but again, today times have changed, and now people are creating songs from just about anything and everything. And I look at melodies. You look at some of the big groups today, Northern Cree, Young Spirit. I think of our groups here in New Mexico. I like to credit, Black Eagle. I think about, uh, we got a lot of groups. Taos. I think each pueblos, we got a lot of beautiful singing groups there. I'd say about 16 good groups around here. And I oftentimes say, don't copy from other tribes. You got your own music, your own style, your own originality. Keep it here in New Mexico. The same thing that I offer and say to many of the other tribes and other regions, kind of throw a little story into a little joke into it. I say, you look at the lay of the land, how beautiful it is. Every song starts at a high point and it goes down to the lowest point. You follow that. That's kind of how the format of songs. And then you go back to the halfway point and you go to your second part of the song. Well, yeah, you can say that here in the Southwest, but you go to Nebraska and Kansas, they must only have one song because it's all flat.
That's so interesting you said that to me, because when I compose my music, I take pictures of my homeland in the Opaskwayak Cree Nation, and that's where my music comes from, is the landscape. And
Exactly.
I point, like each point, the tree line or the valley, I graph it out on a music scale, and that's where my melodies come from.
Exactly. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of our message to a lot of the new groups that are coming up, those that are composing songs, and think about the origins and histories. I remember, when people start first copying Chiniki and Stony Park, they created a lot of loose phonetics. I think about Red Nation, I think about Iabe, a lot of these groups over in Minnesota, North Dakota, that took a lot of these songs, that style that they were created back then, but they didn't have any words in their songs. They were just loose phonetic, loose terms. And I asked one of my brothers, Terry, over in the Abbey, I said, hey, where did you get your song from? Oh, we created a song. We just kind of came up with a melody. Well, what does it mean? Incidentally, when you hear a beautiful song as a dancer, and you want to know the history, you feel the spirit. You take some tobacco and you go over to that lead singer and you give it to them and ask them, and it's always respectful that maybe you give them something, maybe some tobacco, a little bit of gas money or coffee money or whatever, but give them some tobacco and they should be able to tell you the origin of that song and what the words mean. But back in the 70s, 80s, a lot of these groups, Red Nation, a lot of these Eagle Tail, a lot of these guys that didn't have, a grasp of their language, just put on a whole bunch of, put any terms that kind of fit mixed and matched. But today, a lot of the trends have changed. A lot of a lot of the Crees, for example, are probably the most copied. The Dakota people as well too. I have to give credit to a lot of the people here in the Southwest. The same thing. Oklahoma, all my Southern brothers, a lot of their songs, go back. Family songs go back, some over 100 years ago. I think about the Gord dance, a lot of their original styles, the Omaha, the Ponca, the Kiowa, Pawnees, some of those tribes that originated from the northern plains, they took a lot of the songs, the traditions to their community, and somewhat has evolved to today, the reflection of perhaps centuries old stories and origins. So that's, I like to say, I credit a lot of the brothers. One of the other ones I had, one of my brothers, Joe B. I think a lot of Powwow people know him. Joe B. asked me to, hey boy, talk about origin history. Both of us being fancy dancers. Tell them about fancy dance. And I kind of wanted to share a little story with a lot of the young guys because fancy dance is perhaps one of the older as well too. But it originated back in the late 1800s when the Buffalo Bill Wild West shows used to tour overseas, and looking to entertain audiences. Of course, back then, in the 1800s, dance was somewhat stoic. They didn't have the feathers and basically an apron and maybe a little noisemaker, whatever, no shirt, no elaborate beadwork or anything like that. And they would come out and circle the wagons, that kind of theme. You look at the stereotypical circle the wagons thing that Buffalo Bill incorporated in a lot of his shows. And so there were a lot of Dakota people that went on these shows, a lot of tribes. Pawnee Bill took some people over there, and what happened? They found it kind of rather boring. These the Indians kind of walk around, and the dance really wasn't what you see today. So I oftentimes say that Buffalo Bill had an influence. He told the dancers to put more feathers on, put more bells on, and the drum beat back then was a basic 1-2 beat. You know, that old Hollywood beat, dum 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 dum. You know, I kind of chuckled about that, but that was the beat back in the late 1800s. And so he asked them to pick up the tempo. That's what you see today. You know, you look at the fancy dancers. You know, they say, well, you know, where did it come from? I say, well, if you look at Buffalo Bill, Pawnee Bill, you know, they took that interpretation down to Oklahoma, and some tribes claim to have be the origin of it. But like I say, it's kind of Pan American. And you look at the incorporation of feathers, beads. But I might say today, looking at regalia back to my early days, you know, back in the early 50s, some of the regalia today is perhaps some of the most beautiful I've ever seen in my life. But a lot of the origins of what I was talking about earlier, colors and design, uh, lost a lot of the origin, the meaning of it. Because you look at some of the movies, even they had an influence on powwow. You know, and when Little Big Man came out, for example, you know, that guy come out with the horns, you know, and kind of come out and he hit Little Big Man over the head, and he had these bones on his face, you know, on that buffalo headdress. And I cracked up when I was looking at that. As soon as I saw that movie for the first time, I said, you know, I wonder how long it's going to take before that hits powwow. I'll be darned, you know, within 2 weeks, I went to a powwow, and there were 3 guys that come out with these bones hanging in their face. And the same thing with painting your face. You know, when you see Kiss, for example, they have their star all painted up. And how long is that going to take before that happens? And I have to credit Tim White Eyes, Omaha boy that started coming out in powwow. He was one of the first guys that come out painting his whole face. And I remember when he came up to Montana, eventually up to Alberta, Canada, had an influence on a lot of the young people. Now you go to a lot of the powwows up there, you know, people all painting up their faces, and sometimes you see Kiss, you see that star and that mustache looks like a cat. And I look at some of these guys today, and I think, yeah, they, you know, how much the media has affected dance, how much money has affected powwow. But again, when you look at the origin of painting, that was a reflection of spirit. The spirit, you know, you look at the paint, what the red means, you know, and what the black means. Time of death, taking coup, counting coup on the enemy. Uh, each again has its own. Each tribe or nation kind of has its own interpretation. I often warn a lot of my students, never put black dots on your face, because black dots is only time that we bury someone. You know, you sometimes paint we never tattoo, but you paint them a certain way when you lay them down, return them back to Mother Earth. There's a purpose and a reason for it. When you put the red mark or the markings on their eyes and on their face, the same holds true for dance. You have to be very, very careful and very respectful. So, but it's something that, again, Pan America, you know, we look at powwows today, the contemporary powwows, everybody copies from one another. Again, I have to say, a tradition that I saw among the Cree people. I lived up in Cree countries from, well, I would say the 70s, or I stayed up there, powwowed up there from mid 70s to 2005. And one thing I saw up there, you know, in ceremony, I really admired the Cree was not only their music, but their tradition, their culture. The Cree people, when young boys see a dancer, a big champion, you know, they would go over and give them tobacco, give them some tobacco and give them something. Is it all right if I copy this part of your regalia, how you wear your feathers, how you paint your face, you know? Many other people don't do that today, but I find it rather respectful. I credit again the Cree people for adopting that kind of tradition, passing of the tobacco. Tobacco is another area that it's not a payment. Tobacco is an invitation. Invitation. Someone gives me tobacco. They ask for information, or they ask me to come to their powwow, come to their ceremony. That tobacco is an invitation to say that I will take care of you. I will give you a bed to sleep in. I will feed you. I would take care of you. So you come to my ceremony, my powwow. Some people misconstrue that tobacco and go put it on a drum and say that's payment. That's really what not the purpose of that tobacco is. It's an invitation. It's a preparation, and so many of the traditional tribes today use that tobacco in that sense. When we look at spirituality in the world of powwow, sage is used for the body. This is a long held tradition, centuries old tradition. Sage is to protect the body. They will put it in their pockets, sometimes in their moccasins. Part of the regalia is to protect the individual. Cedar is to protect an object like a pipe, your feathers, something material. You will wrap it in cedar, your fan, your medicine, anything that has somewhat sacredness. It's covered with covered and wrapped in cedar. Sweetgrass is for the mind. When you have bad dreams and you can't sleep at night, or your children have bad dreams, or perhaps someone passed on in your family, the sweetgrasses come out and then it's utilized to again to appease the spirit. And what in appeasing the spirit, when you call upon them, tobacco, I guess to add a little bit more to it, tobacco is the most sacred of all our objects, all our medicines, and possesses a communication between the physical world and the spiritual world. So when we offer tobacco, when we smoke, we put it in our pipe, and we utilize it in a sense that we are communicating with the Great Spirit, Mauna in my language. You communicate. That smoke that goes up, you carry it with through prayers. So again, those are the basic ones. Other areas they use bitterroot, they use pine needles. Each tribe or each area region has somewhat their own variations of incense, so to speak. Even in the church, you look at the Vatican. I was over in Rome on tour, many years ago, and they use the incense as they come down in their prayers. The same thing. It's no different than Indian country. We utilize it in ceremony. I myself am again very respectful of it, and teaching a lot of my students, the meaning of what it truly means. Uh, what brings the spirit to a ceremony, to the world of powwow, because we utilize all these incense, these scents to bring spirit. They're attracted to certain scents, to certain smells. And so that's how I have used it over the years. I use it in ceremony in the same sense because it attracts certain spirits. We talk about spirituality, talk about learning. As part of one of my classes I have today, uh, learning, teaching. I wondered, one of my crow grandfathers, Tom Yellowtail, I used to go to his sun dances then, yeah, out on that center pole, and people would line up and they'd give him tobacco and he would lay it down on the ground. As he laid it down and he would pray, there'd be maybe 30, 40 people. And I used to wonder, my grandfather's in his 70s and 80s, how could he remember every one of these prayers and purposes? So in a sweat, we're going in a sweat, and I asked him in a nice way, grandfather, how do you remember all of that? Every prayer, as he lays it down a certain way on that blanket, on that buffalo robe. And he said, scent. And I thought about that, over the years, and being a traditionalist, I thought about it later on when I went to school and come down here to New Mexico. And, as many students, a lot of us college students, tend to procrastinate, wait till the last minute, and you cram the night before exams. And I thought of my grandfather and what he said, scent, and so, I utilize, and there's another element to it, is utilize cologne. Cologne can also be utilized like sweetgrass, cedar, sage. In the world of powwow, you come out into the arena, you can smell all kinds of fragrances, Indian perfume, different colognes, and sometimes the women come by, it smells like a bunch of lilac bushes, so to speak. But again, drawing certain spirits to dance. In my dance classes, I always utilize uh, cologne, perfume, as a way to develop or evolve your own spirit. In dance, it's the same thing, but beyond that, I think about what my grandfather taught me. So I thought about that, and so the night when I was studying, I put some cologne on, and next day I went into my class and I put it on again, took it out of my locker, and I went in, and lo and behold, I aced all my exams because utilizing learned from the Indian native culture that you can remember things by scent. And so when you think about the purpose of cedar, sweetgrass, sage, the cologne that we use in powwow sometimes, the scent, it has a spirit to it. And so I'm talking about spirituality in a sense of powwow and how we come together. And it's a beautiful way, and I tell my students a lot of times, and students over the years, I've been teaching dance since the 80s and 1980s, and some of them come to me and they laugh and they hold up, hey, I have my spirit with me. I still utilize that cologne. I said, oh, you learned something. And another area that I kind of really wanted to address to the people today in the world of powwow is the term sacredness. Sacred and secrecy are the same. You can't separate those two words, sacred and secrecy. As long as something is secret, it maintains the power of sacredness. The minute you expose something, perhaps someone goes out and sun dances or goes out and fasts. Next day they're writing a book about it. They're telling everything that they saw. You think about that. They destroyed all the sacredness. Our ceremonies, our lodges back home, our bundles, everything has a certain sacredness to it. Our pipes are sacred. Never bring them to a powwow. Our women are sacred. Our women, we hold them in high honor. We bestow high honors on them, especially as warriors. In the world of powwow, we do the same. Women, we hold them in high esteem. They have the power to create life, but they also can hurt us as well. We have to be very careful with our women. And the term, I guess, is having their monthly cycles. One does not go near powwow. One does not go near ceremony in time of their monthly, and so sacredness is something that we have to be very careful of. Those medicine bundles should not be brought to powwows. Those pipes should not be brought to powwows. And even using the word, I hear people at powwow, some MCs will say, the sacred dance, sacred song. We don't want anybody to record it. Then I have to say, then why are you singing it? And I'm very careful. I never use the word sacred when I talk about powwow. Eagle whistles. Eagle whistles do not belong in powwow. It's a time of ceremony, a time of Sundance. And some people, young people today that may not have this knowledge, bring Sundance whistles to powwow because they don't understand. There's two circles, one that is sacred and one that is powwow. And by the overlapping these two circles, that's where you create this confusion today. What is termed sacred? Sacred has its own circle. Ceremony, religion should remain at home. And I think I told you during one of my texts or past conversations that, when we talk about sacredness, it should always remain at home. Be careful. Be careful how you talk. Be careful how you conduct yourself. Because whatever you say about someone, word's going to get to them. Sometimes it might be tenfold. But always be very careful of what you say in the world of powwow. A warrior, when speaking, should never tell a lie, especially at powwow, time of ceremony, in our lodges. When he stands up and speaks, people should listen. And learn your own customs, learn your own traditions first before you go on the outside world. Your rights that you have at home doesn't necessarily apply to another tribe, another region, another area, unless that arena director or that elder might come up to you and give you tobacco. I want you to take care of that feather pickup. I want you to take care of that ceremony. Lead us. Then I will perhaps probably follow suit. But again, never force your traditions, your culture on other people. So only when asked, only when given tobacco is an invitation will I assist someone else. The same with feathering somebody. I do not cross clan lines. Each clan, you depend on your uncles, your grandfathers, your big brothers to conduct that ceremony. times I have been asked by other clans to come and help, to feather someone, to give a name to them, to name their then they come and give me tobacco and ask me, and I oftentimes have to say, I'm sorry, I wish I could help you, but I can't. That belongs within your clan, within your tribe. For me, if I go and do that ceremony, I'm disrespecting your tradition, your way. But if you cannot find anyone, then I will do the ceremony for you. But I've had to do that many times at different powwows. The same with name giving. Name giving was given by our warriors. It's in a spirit of not necessarily taking of a life as a spirit of something that you encountered in battle, something that you saw, that we give names to individuals. We do not give names of our grandfathers, big brothers, or pass it on to somebody. It's always given by a warrior in ceremony. You can't just merely say, okay, grandson, from this day on, this is your story, this is your spirit, you know. So again, that's another ceremony. You have to be very careful, very respectful. But again, you know, Powwow as a whole is more than, as you said at the beginning, more than a profession. It's a way of life for many of us. And it's a good road. It's a good journey. Be respectful of one another. Love one another. Sometimes we lose someone, and somebody may say, "Well, oh well, this person was not necessarily all that good. He's always in trouble. You know, maybe it's good to see him. You know, he's gone now." I have to say, hey, you know, think about who replaces them, because in that circle, that Herushka circle, we're all family, whether we're singers, dancers, even spectators. So we're all related. We're all family, and we think in a good way. And so I hope that kind of clarifies what you're saying is, again, a way of life for our people. I've told one side, and I'm sure many other warriors will say the same. You know, those that are taught, and I often try to help as many warriors. As a veteran, I sat on the National Vietnam Veterans Board, the Indian portion of it, and done a lot of workshops, and I'm always there to help out my fellow warriors. And I don't charge for it. Somebody wants me to come in, I help out with what I can, teaching them there's certain steps we use, there's certain ways how we conduct ourselves, and how to do the ceremony. There's a certain protocol, but I'm always willing to share that as a red feather. I also want to acknowledge all my Lakota brothers, the veterans, all the combat veterans are out there. I want to acknowledge all of you and brothers that are turning in today and tonight, and my sisters. You know, carry that spirit on, and always with respect. I love and miss each and every one of you, and I wish I could be there today. But again, this COVID gives me a little time to think, and being able to speak to you tonight. And so I hope that you have learned. You know, those that have listened learned something, and if you have a little, maybe different understanding of it, talk to your grandfathers, talk to your uncles, talk to the veterans, you know, talk to your traditional elders, and they perhaps will reinforce it. They too will also share their story as well. So again, Rhonda, I really, really appreciate, you know, being able to speak tonight, and hopefully we shall continue.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that and your knowledge and especially spirituality and the protocols of the Powwow arena. And yeah, just thank you for sharing all that. That's I was learning a lot as well listening to you, and I'm sure the viewers that have tuned in were enjoyed your what you shared this evening. I just want to thank everyone for tuning in this evening. And yeah, thank you for being my 61st guest for Indigenous Superstars. And I know you sent me a text earlier saying that you didn't consider yourself a superstar, and you're not the first one to say that to me that I've interviewed on the Powwow Trail. They're all telling me that, but you know what? There is celebrities in the Powwow Trail, and like you say, the young people look up to you and up to the celebrities, and they'll go like the Cree people. You were saying that the Cree youth were going and offering tobacco. Like they're role models, and it's a real beautiful way of life. And not only there's protocols to adhere to. There's there's also like working out. You have to be in good physical condition in order to dance, right?
Well, in dancing, as I kind of wanted to close off, a guy one time long ago told me that, powwow is a religion. And I kind of stated that I disagreed because we have our way of life back home, our religion. I guess we don't call it religion, we call it way of life. And I thought about over the years being a powwow man, and that happened about 50 years ago. And today, I do see what he was talking about: spirituality in the powwow circle, healing, family making, prayer. But it's a different form of spirituality. But it's a good circle. There is a lot of healing. You listen to the music and the melody, and uh, and again, it's something they've always practiced. And for a lot of the newbies, people that are new generation, millennials, so to speak, respect. Think, let's respect your elders, respect your parents, listen when they speak. And those that don't, that's listen with their mouth, are the ones that are always going to fall to the wayside. So you think about dance, it's a good circle. It's a very respectful circle. And I guess in closing, I kind of wanted to say, if you have a gift, share it. If you have a weakness, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Thank you for that, Boye. And yes, I was told too, if you have a gift, it's your duty to share it, with the world. So thank you for being my guest this evening. I just want to let people know that my next musical guest on Monday is Dale Mack from Saskatchewan, and my powwow guest is Donna Pratt from Sioux Valley. So I'm looking forward to interviewing them next week. And I want everyone to stay safe, stay healthy, sanitize your hand, wear a mask, and social distance so we can see each other again on the Powwow Trail. Because I know I'm getting a new dress made and I can't wait to bring it out.
Right on, right on. Next time,
Yeah.
put my halo up there.
So yeah, thank you for being my guest tonight and sharing your knowledge with all of us.
All my brothers in Canada, I miss you.
Yeah, we all miss you too. Like I
Oh,
said.
oh.
Yeah.
Tune in again next time when Rhonda interviews another up-and-coming Indigenous superstar. Only on Indigenous Superstar.